Hey, so my name is Blair Dudley. I'm a business consultant. I'm an accountant, and I've been working with businesses and nonprofit organizations since 1996. I've helped thousands of them get going and set up properly or fixed how they were improperly set up. Currently, I'm part of a marketing agency and business development agency called Big Springs Promo. I'm also a big part of Hip Cookeville and newly formed Hip C TV. So got a few things going on, but so the Biz Foundry and the Business Resource Collective asked me to go over a few things about how to officially register your business. And so I'm going to do that. It's a lot of information, so I'm not going to be able to go into detail on pretty much anything. However, we are preparing a document, a deliverable document that you'll be able to get after this call. We can email it to you or whatever, however it's best to do it. So let's just jump right into it. So you've decided to start a business, you're excited, or you're thinking about the possibility of doing it. Well, here's a few things that you need to know from a legal and also practical standpoint about what you're getting into to make things flow properly. So the first thing you're going to need to do is you're going to need to choose a structure for your business, which is, here's some choices. You've got a sole proprietor, which means it's you, right? You're going to file, your business is going to run through your personal tax return. You don't have to incorporate or anything. And so under that structure, all liability is also on you. There's also a partnership that you can do, and that could be two people, multiple people. You could have a partnership with a person and a corporation even. And so that structure also doesn't have a whole lot of liability protection to it, but it's an easy structure to set up, and it'll flow through your personal taxes in a different manner altogether. You also have LLC. This is where we start getting into filing with the Secretary of State and paying some fees. LLCs offer liability protection. You can have a one-member LLC. You can have multiple member LLCs. One thing you need to know is that this is going to trigger your filing a separate tax return for the LLC, and then it's going to flow through your personal tax returns with K-1s. And if you're choosing an LLC structure, it's very important to talk with somebody about exactly what you're doing, because if you choose a one-person LLC, there are several regulations that you don't have to register for in the state of Tennessee anyway. For instance, if you have two-person LLC, you're going to be liable for franchise and excise tax, which we'll talk about a little bit later. If you have one-person LLC, you will not be liable for that. C corporation. That's the way you think of corporations. It's people own stock in the corporation itself. You're typically paid as an employee of a C corporation. It has a great deal of liability protection in it, and you file an 1120S with the IRS, which is a much more complicated return than your personal tax return is. And there can be a lot of reasons for that. I personally am favorable to C corporations for businesses if they're trying to decide between LLCs and a corporation structure. In the event you already have a corporation that you have formed in another state and you're coming into Tennessee, and you want to operate under the same corporation, you don't want to form something new, then you have to get what's called a certificate of authority for a foreign corporation in Tennessee. That just means, and when I say foreign corporation, that means it's foreign to the state of Tennessee, which means it could have been formed in Alabama, Kentucky, or another state. But the state of Tennessee wants to know that you're around, and you will have to keep paying fees to the state that you're incorporated in. But you're also going to need to start paying some money to the state of Tennessee for operating here. That's done through the filing certificate of authority, or forming a C corporation, or forming an LLC, are all done through the Secretary of State's office in the state of Tennessee, by the way. Another one, which some of you may be looking at, is you want to start a nonprofit organization. Well, the only way to do that in the state of Tennessee, and that you're going to be able to also go through the IRS examination, which you have to go through to be actually a nonprofit, or to be a 501c anything, C3, C6, C4 nonprofit. You have to go through IRS examination. The only way that you can form a nonprofit that will make it through that process is going to be by forming a nonprofit corporation in the state of Tennessee. So don't let anybody tell you that you can form an LLC and make it a nonprofit. You cannot do that. The importance of, if you're forming a nonprofit, getting that thing incorporated is going to set a date for you too, which is going to be the date that your exemption with the IRS is going to be dated back to. So it's a very important date. So that's the basics of the different structures you can pick for a business or a nonprofit business. And you need a lot more detail. You need to speak with somebody. If you need to talk with somebody more about that, the Biz Foundry can recommend you out to sources. I'm always happy to talk with somebody about briefly about what they're looking at as well. So once you've decided, okay, I want to start this business, and here's the structure I think I might want, you probably need to do a name search with the Secretary of State just to make sure that somebody else hasn't had the exact same name idea. You need to pick a name for your business. You don't always have to pick a name for your business. It could just be you as a sole proprietor. And that's perfectly fine. You can also operate under DBAs. If you're a sole proprietor, you can say, I could say I'm Blair Dudley. I'm operating as Big Springs Promo. That's not our current structure, by the way. You also probably want to do a URL search to make sure that your business name is available on the web. And if not, that may cause you to rethink your business name. You can register DBAs in the state of Tennessee. You can form a corporation and operate under a different DBA. So these are all things that you need to consider or research or talk to somebody about. These are very important to get these things thought through a little bit before you get going. Another thing is you need to think about, you need to get an email address for your new business. You're going to need it, like pretty much immediately. You're going to need an email address, or pick an email address that you currently have that you don't mind using for your business address. Let's talk about when you're filling out paperwork, the difference between a mailing address and your physical address. If you're registering with the state of Tennessee as a corporation especially, you're going to need an actual physical address that they can deliver mail to, not a P.O. box. And that's because the state of Tennessee is going to require you to have what's called a registered agent. And so the registered agent is nothing but somebody that if they want to serve papers on you for whatever reason in the future, they can come and find somebody. to do that with. That doesn't mean your mailing address has to be the same, but these are things to think about when you're forming the business itself. Another important part, and this is going to be, we'll go over opening a bank account, but you need to register with the Internal Revenue Service, especially if you have, if you're not operating as a sole proprietor. You're pretty much going to have no choice but to do this. And so you need to get what's called a Federal Employer Identification Number. A lot of people just call it EIN. It's FEIN. You get that by, you can go online to the IRS website to register for it, or you can fill out what's called a Form SS4, which is this thing. And you can print that off online and mail it in. I highly recommend doing it online. It's not a difficult process. I do want to go over, however, when you're completing an SS4, you have some different options. If you're a new business startup, then one of the options on here is that you need an FEIN for banking purposes only. And so that's the one you typically are going to want to choose unless you already are planning on hiring employees, or you have hired employees. If you fill out if you check any other box on this form when you start a new business, you're going to start getting forms from the Internal Revenue Service that they're going to, at some point in time, expect you to file. Even if you don't have employees, they're going to expect you to file those forms. But if you'll check off on banking purposes, then that will satisfy the requirements for the IRS. It'll also satisfy the requirements that your bank's going to have, that you have to have an EIN to open a bank account under your business. Now, and the information on this is pretty much, who are you? They're going to want your social security number, where you're located, what type of business you're starting, sole proprietorship, partnership, corporation, nonprofit, church, and then they do want to know if you do have employees, when are they going to start, and have you already paid them? So it's not difficult at all. I always encourage everybody to get an accountant or a lawyer's guidance on this stuff if you don't know, but a lot of times just talking in common sense language is also helpful with it. But you don't have to spend a lot of money. It costs you nothing to do a federal ID number. Depending on what your business is, not all businesses have to do this, but it's something you need to explore whether or not you need to do this. You'll need to register with the state, in this case the state of Tennessee, and also local county and city agencies at times. And so one of the things that you may have to register for is sales tax. If you're selling products and certain services, you're going to need to register for and collect sales tax on those things. And the state of Tennessee will, I promise you, they'll catch up with you if you don't do this. So you need to explore it. Talk to your accountant about whether what you are doing needs to be registered for sales tax or not. And then you do that through the Tennessee Department of Revenue. You can go to their site. They have online filing systems and all this. And it's not that difficult a thing to get registered as well. The difficult thing is in determining whether or not you need to be registered. Another thing is you would, if you have employees, and pretty much only if you have employees, you're going to need to register with the Tennessee Department of Labor. and that's for unemployment taxes, which the employer pays. And that's not a difficult process either, to do that. And it's another thing that if you don't do it and you are filing with the Internal Revenue Service but not the Department of Labor, they do talk to one another on occasion, and either way they'll figure it out. And then of course there's penalties and interest when you do that. Just a brief thing, if you're thinking about hiring people on and you are thinking, well, they're not going to be actually an employee of mine, or they're only going to work a few hours, whatever the case may be, you need to talk to somebody, talk to your accountant, talk to a lawyer, somebody about what an employee is. Because the truth is that the amount of time that somebody works for you, if somebody's worked for you for 4 days or for 40 years, is not relevant to whether they are an employee or not. And if they are an employee, then you're responsible for withholding taxes, Social Security and Medicare taxes on them. And the government likes their money, and they will eventually come looking for it. So it's just something to look at. There may be, depending on what you're doing, let's say you're a plumber, you're a restaurant, whatever, there are other licenses that I don't even know what they are, but I know that you better find out what they are from your local municipalities, health permits, all these different things. That depends on what you're doing. Mostly, unless you're just a personal service type business, then you're probably going to have to file for a city and a county license. So county for sure, city if you happen to also be in the city limits for a license. And in Cookeville, you do that by going to the city hall for the city one, and you go to the county clerk's office for the county license. It's not a difficult form. Matter of fact, it is the same form. If you fill it out once, you will be able to make a copy of it and take it to both offices, and it's going to cost you like $15 to file that thing. That's another thing that eventually the state, because it's a state requirement, will make you file. They'll find you and make you file it, and then it becomes a pain. Another tax that you'll end up paying if you do have to file a city and county license called personality tax. They'll just send you the form. Don't worry about it. They'll send it to you. It's not too difficult to fill out. But let's talk about opening a bank account really quickly. So you walk into the bank. You want a bank account. Why do you need a bank account? Now, you need a separate bank account for your business because technically, commingling business funds with personal funds is actually illegal. More practically, at some point in time, you need to know how much money you're making in your business. That needs to be separated. And your accountant, if you use an accountant, would much prefer that you have separate funds so that they don't have to go through your personal account and figure out, which of these purchases are pizza versus business expenses. It also helps if in the event that you ever did get audited, then here's my business account. Here's what I made, as opposed to here's my business account, my personal account, and every other account. When you go into the bank, you're going to need to take with you copies of any partnership agreement that you may have. If you filed with the Secretary of State as a C Corp, you're going to need that charter. An LLC, you're going to need a copy of that document. You're going to already need to have a federal identification number from the IRS when you go in there. If you're anything but a sole proprietor operating under your Social Security number. Some banks are going to require you, even if you didn't find that you needed to, some banks are going to require you to get a local license as well, to open a bank account there. That's bank requirements. And they vary by bank. Record keeping. You need to have a system. Talk to somebody about a system. The time to think about a system is before you realize that you should have had a system for the last year of your life. You need to keep up with things like, obviously, your income and your expenses. Some other things that people rarely think about. You get a business tax deduction for keeping up with your mileage, the mileage you're driving for business miles. It's a very good tax deduction that can save you a lot of money. So keep up with that. You're supposed to keep written records of it. There are apps out there that you can use for stuff like that. You should keep records, business records, for 7 years, because that's the look back period that the IRS can go and take a look at things on average. If you don't want to keep them 7 years, for goodness sakes, keep them 3 years at least. But you should keep them 7. I highly recommend, it's not that expensive to outsource a bookkeeper to take care of your QuickBooks. It'll free your time up. It will make your business more effective. It'll keep your tax filing costs down, typically, because your accountant's not going to charge you as much. So I would recommend exploring somebody to do QuickBooks for you. You can get lots of recommendations from the Biz Foundry. It's an accounting system. You're going to have that. Welcome to the world of business.